I am so fortunate. I am so fortunate. Can you folks hear me okay? Just give me a quick thumbs up. Yeah, okay, awesome. Good morning, family. I'm here to read the theme and the reading. So the theme for January 2022 is living everyday wonder. The topic for today is question everything. Question everything. I offer you two quotes to contemplate. The first is from Ernest Holmes in Science of Mind. And he says, the answer to every question is within us because we are within spirit. And spirit is an indivisible whole. The solution to every problem is within us. The second quote is by Jacqueline Winspear from her book called Maisie Dobbs. And I love this. Listen to these words as I read this. Truth walks towards us on the paths of our questions. Wait a while in the stillness and do not rush to conclusions, no matter how uncomfortable the unknowing. What this reminds me of is I don't have to figure it out. Spirit is going to lead me. Spirit is leading me to the truth, and the truth is coming towards me. So let's affirm together. I ask new questions and allow the answers to come. And now I want to invite the allowing of great wisdom, truth, beauty to come through in the presence of Dr. Reverend Kathleen Johnson.
Thank you so much, Jen. Yes, those quotes and that energy of Jen have really set us up for this topic today called Question Everything and how it fits into this overarching theme for this month and the year, Living Everyday Wonder. But I'd like to start by a very reverent honoring of a great man, a Zen Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away yesterday. To me, he completely and totally stands for all of the things that we teach here in this community. Yes, he's of a different tradition, spiritual tradition, but his contemplative, his commitment to contemplation, to mindfulness, his commitment to social justice initiatives, to me, exemplify what it is that we choose, that vision that is pulling us forward as not only a spiritual community, but as a spiritual movement, as part of Centers for Spiritual Living, and as part of the New Thought, Ancient Wisdom tradition. A little bit about him. There's a beautiful article on him in the Science of Mind magazine. So if you don't have a copy of it, I invite you to get one and to read the article on him, because it tells a lot more detail about his life than I can in this talk today. But just a few things about him. He became a global spiritual leader, a social activist, an author, a poet, and a pioneer in bringing what's called engaged or socially engaged Buddhism, where moving Buddhists into action, and he was really involved in the peace protests and also working on reconciliation between North and South Vietnam, which is his home country, during those times. He was also involved in bringing mindfulness to the West, and Buddhism, and particularly mindfulness to the West. And so let us take a moment of silence, if we would, and honor this great bodhisattva, sage, brilliant man who did so many things in his 95 years that I think he did what 20 people often do, because of his dedication to contemplation and taking action. So let's take a moment of silence, just giving thanks for this beloved, beautiful, universal human. And I'd like to offer one of his quotes that relates to our theme. He said, "Every day we are engaged in a miracle which we don't even recognize. A blue sky, white clouds, green leaves, the black curious eyes of a child, our own two eyes. All is a miracle." Isn't that beautiful? That to me is living everyday wonder exemplified. And it happens only through a spiritual practice of mindfulness and applying the spiritual principles and teachings that are universal in nature and run through all the traditions. That idea of present moment awareness. It's such a powerful place to be, because that's the only place where everything is truly happening. And when we have our full attention in the present moment, we hone in on and become a channel or an expression of the full power, presence, and life of the divine. It's a powerful way to live. And when we do that, when we live in the present in that very focused and powerful way, life flows easily, choices are clearer, and miracles are everyday occurrences. And again, Thich Nhat Hanh was a great example of living in this way. So I have a story to prepare us for the topic for today called Question Everything. And it goes like this. There was a student sitting on a park bench next to his spiritual teacher and asking questions. And one of the questions he asked was, how do you know that there is a God, first and foremost? And then how do you know that this thing called God is love? And the teacher said, well, just look around you. Look at all the magnificent beauty. And, to me, it's such a beautiful expression of God's love. And the student said, but there are things in the world that do not seem very loving to me about God's creation. And so he said, take the hummingbird. It has the capacity to thrive in a small area by flitting from flower to flower, yet it can and does fly thousands of miles. They could all just hang around in some tropical area and be sustained for a lifetime, but they don't. They move all over the planet. He said, and then there is the hippo. The hippo is big and lumbering, and it has this voracious appetite, just eating a tremendous amount of food. And because it does, this hippo has to move from place to place in its very slow and lumbering way. Of course, we know it travels by rivers and so on. But he said, wouldn't it make sense that hippos should be created to fly as well, so they can fly to a new food source with ease and grace. He said, why didn't the Creator give hippos wings to fly? So just about that moment, a bird flew over and dropped a load right on top of the student. To which the teacher looked at him and said, why don't hippos fly? I think you know the answer. So questions, living in the questions and allowing the answers to present themselves, right? And you know, our spiritual tradition, one of the things I love a lot of things about it, but one of the things I love about it is our spiritual tradition. Science of Mind is open at the top, and Ernest Holmes talked about that, about the importance of being open at the top, meaning being available through questioning to greater understanding of spirit, our relationship to spirit, and our deeper understanding, therefore, of not only this divine presence that we are of and that we are, but also how universal law works. Spiritual law is what I'm talking about. So one of our tenets goes like this: we believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may be a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. Lives in close contact with the indwelling God, our intuitive and our spiritual nature. So the practice of asking questions, and I'll call it a spiritual practice because it is called sacred inquiry. And when we do this, it keeps us in close contact with the indwelling divine presence, that infinite universal intelligence that is laser focused because it's indivisible within each one of us. You know, it's the presence of God is a presence whose center is everywhere. It's right where I am, it's right where you are, it's right where Michelle is, where everyone is, in its totality. In its totality. So through these questions then, it not only keeps us in close contact with the indwelling God, but because of that, it's a portal for creativity, innovation, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Wow, that's everything that we've ever been seeking already within us. So your willingness, my friends, to ask questions, and we're going to be talking about what kinds of questions, keeps you open at the top, and that means ever evolving. So the three things I'm going to be talking about today are question everything, spiritual discernment, and living in the question. So question everything. You know, when I was reviewing this beautiful article by Thich Nhat Hanh, and there was also something in the newspaper today, I became very clear that this is a man that questioned everything. Because his monastic tradition of Zen Buddhism when he was in Vietnam was to stay in the monastery and live a contemplative life. Meanwhile, outside, the Vietnam War is taking place. And so he was guided, I'm sure, by living in the question, what is mine to do? He was guided to move into action. And he was a proponent of, and actually started the whole movement of, engaged or socially engaged Buddhism. That wouldn't have happened without him being open at the top and willing to listen and question, just simply being a monastic all the time. He lived in the question. He questioned his tradition and the way that they had done things. Now, he continued to be a contemplative and an activist. He combined both. He didn't abandon one for the other. And thus he brought that bodhisattva, that enlightened presence, into all of his actions. So here's the thing that's very interesting to me is in fact, I'm going to ask you a question. How many questions do you believe that children ask in one day? This was a study that was done. Michelle?
What age?
We're talking about small children.
Small children.
Mm-hmm.
30.
It's between 70 and 100 questions a day, okay? And they're questions like the one we heard last week is, I wonder what it feels like to be a bat hanging from the ceiling. Those are really powerful questions, that children like to ask. And then, so they're born, all of us are born naturally inquisitive, naturally curious about life, wanting to understand, this great eagerness and urge to understand life and our world. So how many questions, Michelle, do you believe that adults tend to ask a day?
I ask hundreds.
You ask hundreds. Well, in this survey, it was 20. It was 20 questions a day. And most of those questions are called closed questions or limited questions. And so they're like yes, they have yes/no answers, like, do you want to go out to a movie? Or you want to watch a TV show together? Or, or limited questions that are just like short answer, like, what do you want to have for dinner? Those are questions, but they're closed. They're not things that take us deeper into a deeper understanding of our nature, of ourselves, and of our world. So if we're willing to stay open at the top, then the nature of our questions needs to change. These limited questions, in other words, increasing and asking more, what we call open-ended, and they're very empowering, open-ended questions. So that reignites our curiosity, that helps us to grow, expand, and unfold spiritually. Open-ended questions, it's so vital. And to ask them from a place of love, and I really appreciate Gay Hendricks for bringing this to my attention. It's not only asking open-ended questions, but asking them from a place of love instead of fear. So it means taking a moment, becoming mindful, breathing, dropping into our hearts, maybe even breathing in and out of our hearts a few times, and then saying, and he does this, and I love this, because it reminds me of the Sufi or Om, that gets us in resonance with that truth of the present moment. So he starts by doing that, breathe, drop into the heart, and I wonder. You move into that beautiful state of wonderment, and then ask the question. So they could be questions like this, and these are pretty deep questions. How are my decisions being influenced by fear? That means things like addictions, attachments, or insecurities. How are my decisions being influenced by fear? In other words, addictions, attachments, and insecurities. Do you have the courage to really look at that in your own life? I do. It's something that I choose to do. And the next one is, I wonder. What steps can I take to support my health? Or what steps can I take to support or build faith? And I know my answer to that some time ago when I contemplated that was to do my spiritual practice more often, particularly spiritual mind treatment. And so now it's something that I do much more frequently, often multiple times a day. And let's do this one. I wonder, how will my decision, whatever decision you're making, make a difference in the world? How will my decision make a difference in the world? So by asking open-ended questions, we challenge our limiting beliefs and habits that go with them. And we reveal more of our divine nature, which means that we begin to see more clearly that we do things differently. And I think about Thich Nhat Hanh doing things differently than what his fellow monks were doing. And we also learn new things. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh, because he was when he tried to get reconciliation between the North and South Vietnam, when he started organizing youth to be active in standing up for peace. You know, he wasn't against things, so rather than saying anti-war, standing up for peace in Vietnam during war times, he was basically, when he left the country, he was basically told that he could not return. His passport was denied, and he ended up being exiled for 39 years in France. But in that process, by asking open-ended questions, and I'm sure he did this in his own way because he was suffering greatly for not having a country to call his own, he began to get answers of building what's now called Plum Village, which is a village in France that has impacted hundreds of thousands of people in bringing mindfulness to the West and building community, what is called beloved community. So open-ended questions help us do things differently, learn new things, and we become more creative and innovative. So here's what I think. I think that open-ended questions rock. They do. I mean, think about it. It requires us to get beyond our habitual status quo patterns and to dive deep and find a new path, a more expansive path. So the next one is spiritual discernment. So how often do you seek answers outside yourself? And you know, gathering together and learning and studying and all of those things are really powerful. And then when it comes time to receive guidance for your own particular life and find out how to apply the principles that you're learning, are you still asking other people for advice, or are you consulting the inner divine that is within you? Because deep within, and let's hear this very clearly, is the entire all-knowing, universal mind, universal love intelligence of God, Spirit, the divine, whatever you want to call that unified field of love intelligence, centered right where you are. I know I say this often, but it's a big it's a big idea, and I want it to sink in for me. And I'm inviting you for you to allow it to sink within you. So if that's true, then all the answers that we need to guide our lives, how to apply those spiritual principles that we're learning in the most effective way to move us into action, those answers are within us. And it's the source of what we call intuition, that universal mind, the source of our intuition. So it gives intuition a whole different perspective for me. So the spiritual practices that we teach, called visioning, and I'm going to also be introducing spiritual discernment, use this sacred inquiry of asking questions to receive answers from the all-knowing mind of God within us. They begin with centering in oneness consciousness. There's only one life, one presence, one source, one power, And that presence is centered right here where I am, oneness consciousness, and in love. So because I am one with the all love of the divine, and I am immersed in that love, and I am of that love, this visioning is anchored in love. This spiritual discernment is anchored in love. Oneness and love. And so then love informs our visioning. Love informs that, and I'm talking about universal love. Love informs our spiritual discernment. So let's put those two together, okay? So in visioning, we have a vision core that does visioning on a regular basis, and then also collates it and comes up with, I'll be talking about that in a minute. Anyway, in visioning, we ask expansive, open-ended questions in order to catch the greatest idea for our lives and with our visioning core, for our spiritual community. And we also ask, after we ask what does it look like, feel like, sound like, our spiritual community, then we also ask questions like, what is it that we are to release? What is it that we are to let go of? What are we to embrace? What are we to become? What are we to embody? Those kinds of questions that ask us, how are we to grow to be in alignment with the vision? And that's where our spiritual work is. It's not on praying about the vision, it's in praying about consciousness, becoming that consciousness through which the vision is living. So we become the living expression of the vision. So after visioning is complete, there's another step. This is something I just, I hadn't really thought of it this way. I think I kind of do this, but I think I'm going to do it more mindfully now. It's called discernment, asking clarifying questions that move us into action. Questions like, okay, so if I must release fear, according to my visioning, what spiritual practice best supports me in letting go of fear? Or, if I must be more allowing, what is my next indicated step to practice allowing? Love it. So in our recent Visioning Core meeting, one of the action steps that we took was to co-create a prayer based on those two steps that I talked about. What must I release? What must I become? We created this beautiful prayer. And then the idea came, well, let's not only do this ourselves, let's share it with all of our leadership. And then I'm even thinking in this moment, I'm being guided, share it with our members. So I'm going to put it in the newsletter and invite everybody to come on board and be involved in this prayer, so that we all then become the consciousness, the vibrational match to the vision and then we'll all feel that pull in the direction of the vision. So that's spiritual discernment. Living in the question. When you get tangled up, I love this, this is just a saying. When you get tangled up in your problems, be still so that spirit can untangle the knot. When you get tangled up in your problems, be still so that spirit can untangle the knot. I know that that's what Thich Nhat Hanh did. Can you imagine the devastation? Even as a pretty enlightened being, that he felt when he could not go back to his home country. And he was also rejected from other countries as well, because the Vietnamese, Saigon, asked other countries to also not honor his passport. But France gave him an exile, and then over time, other countries like ours began to let him come back in and teach and all of the other things that he does so well. But he said during that first year, it was very challenging for him. that first year of exile. And because he didn't have a home on the planet, he sought a home. Is it okay? Oh, is there something going on? Okay. He sought a home. He sought a home within himself through mindfulness practice. And eventually he was alleviated of his suffering. So living in the question means a willingness to stay in the question, in the stillness within, until the answer is received, which allows spirit to untangle the knots so that we can receive inspired, creative ideas and solutions. So I love Jacqueline Winsper's quote about, walking, our questions walk us toward the truth, or the truth walks toward us through our questions. And she goes on to say, as soon as you think that you have the answer, you have closed the path and may miss vital new information. Wait a while in the stillness. Do not rush to conclusions, no matter how uncomfortable the unknowing. What a beautiful way to talk about living in the question, allowing for spaciousness between thought in order to hear the still small voice of that universal intelligence within. So visioning allows
Well, I think we have a battery pack issue, and I'm sure that Michelle is going to plug the computer in. So there is the question of, how will we get this computer back on? There it is.
voila!
It was in charge. It wasn't on that, just it wasn't on.
Wasn't turned on?
So it, no, yeah.
Michelle resolved it very quickly. Thank you, Michelle. Okay.
Our extension cord was not on.
Okay. So I'd like to, just kind of end this particular section with this awareness that visioning is the practice of not only living in the question, but it's a leap in consciousness from our victim or manifestor stage even into allowing life to live through us, being like a channel or a conduit or a vehicle for divine love and its action in the world. And mindfulness is just a beautiful way to live, allow the divine to live through and as us. So it's the practice of the mystic, this thing called visioning that we offer. And Mary O'Malley, in her book, What's in the Way is the Way, said, asking a question signals life, that you are ready to live the answer. And then life lives it through you at the appropriate time. Notice it says at the appropriate time. So that's why we continue to do our practice in full trust and faith. So when we are inquisitive, when we ask these beautiful open-ended questions, life becomes an endless opportunity to grow and to learn. We live in that childlike state of wonder, which is so beautiful in the present moment. Albert Einstein said, I have no special talent. He said, I am only passionately curious. Wow.
Hey Mom, can I ask a question?
Sure, Michelle has a question. What?
What about the question, open-ended question, why me?
Why me?
That's an open-ended question.
Right,
Is that a
right.
helpful open-ended question?
Why me often comes from fear instead of love, and that's the reason why that does not serve you.
That goes in the discernment category.
Yeah, it goes in the, yeah, exactly. So again, if you're asking a question from fear, it's not going to serve you in the same way. Okay, my friends, so seek first the kingdom, and the new kind of the new way people are saying it is seek first the K-I-N-dom, kingdom, our connection with the divine. Seek first the kingdom of God within, and experience the glorious wonders of each day. So I trust and I know that is the truth for you. And I just invite us to turn within in a moment, breathing, moving in that state of wonder, dropping into our hearts, willing to receive truth. And I'm knowing that right here and right now, the glorious, magnificent, wondrous presence of the divine is moving in us, through us, and as us, and into greater, freer, fuller, more expanded expression as we embrace open-ended questions. I am knowing right here and right now there is an urge within us that is irresistible, undeniable, that seeks to grow, expand, and unfold, that seeks to be, to return to that childlike state of wonder, that childlike state of asking open-ended, curious questions. That knowing that that life is present in me right here and right now as I move into the next stage, the next version of myself, and knowing that all of us too continue to move into that next stage, that next version of ourselves, that universal human, that bodhisattva presence, that enlightened presence, and I know that is our truth. I claim it for us right here and right now. I release this word into the universal law of mind and know that it is done. And so it is. Amen.
And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, my friends. And now I'm going to be passing the mic over to our beloved Deb so that she can empower this beautiful statement of truth.